Again, before we begin, I'd like to thank the sponsors, the Richards family, and the Clifford and the Shanker families for sponsoring today. We really appreciate all their participation. It's very appropriate, of course, that we have for Stulberger here. We'd like to thank him and Rabbi for coming from the valley to share their physical control with us. Those who know Rabbi Stulberger know that family is a very tremendous one of big Valminos. Just used to his family and family as we receive from our Tuesday not just anybody who's in yeshiva now. Anyone who ever was in yeshiva. And even if it wasn't for the 5 or 4 years, let's say in our high school, for a couple of years, still that's counted. And that person is your responsibility forever. And it's a very big responsibility, but as the Rabbi throughout the years has shouldered it very well, and I'd like to take this opportunity to personally thank him on a personal level. When I came to Los Angeles, leaving yeshiva, I think I was leaving yeshiva, he left maybe a year or two before me. And he said, when you come back to Los Angeles, we'll teach you about Torah. So, a lot of people have to do a model lesson or something like that. I guess I fooled them enough. So when I first came, the school was very small, and I had the opportunity to teach for Rabbi Stulberger, and I saw firsthand how serious and how serious so I was very focused on today on Tisha because this is somebody who has that tremendous knowledge as well for Rabbi Stulberger.
Thank you so much. Again, overstated introduction, but just a little. It's emotional when it's Tisha B'Av, and this might be. I want to say it, but B'derech HaTeva, the last time I'm coming here on a Tisha B'Av, Be'ez Hashem will be for the reason because we'll all be in Eretz Yisrael. That'd be the best reason why never to come back on Tisha B'Av. We'll all be in Eretz Yisrael, Be'ez Hashem. Just it's I guess a bittersweet moment, and again a very great zchus for me to be here to share some thoughts in this very special welcome Torah, welcome Tefillah. And so unity and achdus is certainly one of the themes that permeates Tisha B'Av, the idea of us getting together. Not so simple. I think a lot of us felt October 7th represented a unique moment in Klal Yisrael with the devastation of that incredibly horrific event. I think the aftermath of that seemed to give a lot of people a sense that this was a renewed, or just a special moment, a new moment in Jewish history where there really was a unique level of achdus. I'm not in Eretz Yisrael, so I can't comment. 9,000 miles away, my feeling is that some of that has dissipated to some degree, and new tensions and new issues are coming up, unfortunately, that are pulling us apart. And certainly, we have to look at ourselves in each and every one of our own lives, our own families, our communities, to do what we can to bring that achdus. And I saw a really fascinating Ben Ish Chai, I saw it quoted. Really wonderful idea in terms of Tisha B'Av and about what this is all about. And the truth of the matter is, it's not a new issue. It's not even an issue that goes back. A lot of us think it goes back to Kamsa Bar Kamsa, but in reality it goes even further back. The Ben Ish Chai talks about the fact that the pasuk that we read in Eicha is connected to the word Merurim, bitterness is connected to the Seder. And there are allusions and connections that we know connect the night of the Seder to the night of Tisha B'Av. We know that every year the night of the Seder is that same night of the week as Tisha B'Av. This past year, Motzei Shabbos was the Seder, Motzei Shabbos was Tisha B'Av, and that's, they say people eat the egg. We eat the egg for that reason, according to some people, but there are certainly references, without going through all of them, that there are connections to the night of Seder and the night of Tisha B'Av. Now, what exactly is that connection in a very real, significant way. And I saw the Ben Ish Chai quote is that there are two dippings we do, of course, in out of the Seder, right? Mapilim shtei pa'amim, and the first dipping, he says, represents a reference to how we got into Golus Mitzrayim in the first place. We're talking about the night of the Seder, Gula. This is the moment of the night of redemption, the night of going out of Mitzrayim. But how did we get into Mitzrayim in the first place? Because there was a dipping that got us into this problem. And what was that dipping? Is when the brothers dipped the garment of Yosef and showed it to Yaakov Avinu. Is this your son's garment? Is this blood? This was, just heard recently, last night, I think that this was maybe, I think Rabbi Wasserman said this was the cause of the blood libels throughout Jewish history. What a crazy accusation which has no basis in truth. But it's rooted back to this concept of the fact that we made up our own Chas v'Shalom blood libel in terms of what is this blood? We sort of made up a story to try to sell Yaakov Avinu. And the sinas chinam of the brothers against Yosef, as much as they might have thought this, they might have thought that, but he says it's rooted ultimately in sinas chinam. If it's not justified, it's sinas chinam. That's why it's called chinam. At the end of the day, we really have a right to every situation could be judged differently and judged in a special way, and look a little bit deeper. So ultimately is why we feel justified, it's chinam. At the end of the day, it's sinas chinam. And the brothers certainly should not have put Yosef in that category and looked at him the way they looked at him. They should have looked a little deeper into themselves and gotten to the truth of the neshamas. Yosef meant l'shem shamayim. He wasn't here out to kill anybody. And then what happens? And what do we need to rectify it? The second dipping, says the Ben Ish Chai, second dipping is the dipping of the Agudas Ezov, that bundle of hyssop that we put into the blood, we put on the blood post, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu jumps over our houses, and he wipes out the Bechorim of Mitzrayim. What an incredible second dipping that represents Aguda, that word Aguda, that word connection, that word unity. The word of this is what has to happen in order to allow us to be redeemed, is that we needed to be one. And ultimately we know, if we get to Matan Torah, we were zocheh to receive the Torah because we had unity. It's such a critical component in what we have to try to strive for, to somehow get out of ourselves, to get out of our biases and our prejudices and our hurt and our feelings, whatever is driving us, and somehow have a greiter vision. As the Mesilas Yesharim says by Chassidus, that we have to be Muhammad's chus on the Jewish world. Just remember about maybe a year ago, I had this really terrible, maybe I shouldn't share it, but just show you how some people can think. It was a horrible statement, but it enlightened me to something that I said to myself, we need work. If this is the feeling, it was a fellow who I wasn't in LA, I was in another place, another community, and there was a fellow from Eretz Yisrael, and I couldn't really tell where he was in the spectrum, and I just said in terms of, religiously and whatever, politically, so I just asked him if he went to the army, because he was looking for a job, whatever, and I asked him, did you spend time in the army? Just totally innocuous kind of curiosity question. He looked at me very askance. He says, army? No way. Mapit told me so. I said, Mapit told me that's so terrible. If I asked you if you defend Eretz Yisrael and you fought in the army, it wouldn't be such a terrible thing. He says, nah, what are you talking about? And he took he took offense by the accusation. And he says, what do you? It's so terrible to defend Klal Yisrael, to stand on the front lines. He says, if it wouldn't be for the Chilonim, I couldn't believe he said this. And it just shows me this is the mentality that really we have to eradicate, because this is a mentality that I think really cuts to the heart of separating us. And he says, we wouldn't have any problem with the Arabs if we were all for them. I said, really? You know that? Do you really know? The problem, the reason why we have to fight is because of the Chilonim. Because if we'd all be religious, we wouldn't have to fight. You know that? So every situation throughout the Golus only happened with secular Jews. Religious Jews never had any problems, never had any pogroms, never had any Holocaust. What are you saying? And this is the projection and the perspective I think is so damaging and so dangerous. We have this feeling when we're looking outward for the blame, and saying that's the problem, you're the problem, he's the problem, she's the problem. Me, I'm not the problem. If everyone was like me, then we'd all be fine. It's a dangerous place to be. It's a dangerous perspective to have. We have to look at everybody favorably. There's an incredible Dasa Kedan that talks about the Yontiv of Sukkot, not such a long period of time from now. We're Yontiv of Sukkot, and we know the famous Medrash that talks about the fact that the Daled represent 4 types of Jews. And only the Esrig is sort of where it needs to be. The Esrig is the Jew that represents Torah and mitzvahs. The Lulav, Torah, no mitzvahs, and the Dasa mitzvahs, no Torah, and the Aravos, no mitzvahs, no Torah. So 3 out of the 4 Jews that are represented by these 4 minim are not where they need to be. We should have Torah and mitzvos. But what does the Torah say? You bind them together. You make an aguda. And that's why he says, the Das Kedim says, we say in Rosh Hashanah, make one aguda referencing this aguda. And he says, when we do that, it doesn't say. If you look at the Medrash and look at the Das Kedim, it's very clear. It's not the idea that let's get it together so we can all become Esregim. Halavai. We all become Esregim, and all the Torah mitzvahs permeates everybody's home. It'd be a beautiful thing. But doesn't say that's not the precondition for the aguda. The aguda is take all 4 Jews where they are, as disparate as they are, literally one without Torah or mitzvos. And you put them together. When you put them together and you show achdus, then the language of the Dasa Kedim, that Kadosh Baruch Hu looks down and says, "Oh, you guys got it. Now you're ready. You're ready for Kadosh Baruch Hu to show the nachas ruach and the ratzon that we need so desperately for the gula." So this idea of somehow recognizing that this is a desperate need and something that we have to work on. It's again, however, we should be there already. Maybe we're this close. We hope we're this close, and all we have to do is sort of move to another direction, just another little inch, another little small movement. We don't know. But still, we have to keep trying. We can't get perturbed. We can't get down. Yes, we cry over the Golus, we cry over the Churban, and we cry over our distance from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but we also have to at the same time be optimistic in knowing that Gula is happening. It's going to happen. It's around the corner. There needs to be an anticipation, a feeling that this is going to happen. We just have to make it happen just a little bit quicker, move it along to whatever extent we can. And the truth of the matter is, just like it goes back before the story of Kamsa by Kamsa, I saw an incredible Klei Yakar yesterday, and the Klei Yakar also makes the point when he talks about the beginning of Devarim, yesterday's parsha, bein Purim, bein Teufel. So what's Purim and Teufel? So Teufel is the Meraglim, and Purim, he says, is these 2 events. While everybody, we look at Bein HaMetzorim, the time of the 3 weeks, as in a time between Shas Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, in terms of the besieging of Yerushalayim and the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. He looks at it from a sort of a more global perspective. There was the Bein HaBsarim was the event of the Ma'aseh Egel, which happened on Shivas B'Tammuz. We worshipped the golden calf, which represented a clear, serious separation between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And of course, the Meraglim, which happened on Tisha B'Av. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, "You cry a cry of vain, I'll give you reason to cry." And he says something incredible. He says that the sin of the Meraglim, the pasuk says yesterday, incredible pasuk. The Sfuna learns differently, but the Klei Yakar says the words that Klal Yisrael said. It's right there in the pasuk. Why are we destined to be destroyed in Eretz Yisrael? The Jews were convinced. They didn't want to listen to Yeshua and to Kalev, and they said, "Oh my gosh, we're going to Eretz Yisrael. They're going to wipe us out. They're going to smash us. They're going to destroy us. Moshe Rabbeinu, what you do to bring us out over here to die in this land?" Why would HaKadosh Baruch Hu do that? B'sinas Hashem Elokeinu. You hear this? HaKadosh Baruch Hu hates us. How do you say he hates us? That's what they said. And he said that was the sinas chinam, that was a projection. He says that they saw hate of another person sort of as not such a far off possibility. It was apparently something that they sort of entertained as being acceptable. And if I hate you, you hate me, God hates me, I mean, it's all like one open season of animosity. And they had this belief, and that was a sinas chinam. That was maybe not the first, because we had the brothers even earlier. But apparently we see that this sinas chinam of not understanding the deep love HaKadosh Baruch Hu has for us, how much he loves us. Even the very first Rashi reminds us where Rashi says, "I can't allow you to write the clear Averis that we're going to get to it later on in the parsha. We're going to talk about the ego. We're going to talk about the meraglim. We're going to get to that in the future parshas. We'll cover all the sins in very clear detail. But when you're going through a litany of the sins, Eila Dvarim, it's got to be hidden. L'chveidin shel Yisrael. Because Baruch Hu says you can't just say it out. You can't just articulate it. The kavod shel Yisrael. This feeling of the close relationship, this feeling of love that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has for us. We know that He's with us in this golus. We know how difficult it is. We know the tzaros that we feel and He feels, and every step of the way Imo nochi b'tzara. So the notion that to think that HaKadosh Baruch Hu hates us, and that's why He did this to us. That was a sinas chinam that literally was, and the Klei Yaakov says that there was sinas chinam even in the first base of Mikdash. It was a sinas chinam. There are other averos as well, but the sinas chinam sort of kept reverberating throughout Jewish history. And ultimately, of course, it culminated with the Churban Bayis Sheni, where things again further devolved. There was lashon hara, sinas chinam. Chavetz Chaim points out Moshe Rabbeinu was walking the streets of Mitzrayim, and he can't understand, what did these people do wrong? How could they have, what did they do so bad that would be worthy of this kind of incredible oppression? The avodas perach that the Mitzrayim were afflicting upon the Jewish people. And he couldn't understand it. He was walking around bewildered. Till surely the Maisa happened where he tried to break up the two Jews from fighting, and he said, "Oh, you're going to kill us like you killed the Mitzri? We're going to tell Paroi." Rashi says, and Rashi explains on those three words. Now I understand. Now I understand what was going on. Because if there's lashon hara, if there's negativity in Klal Yisrael, then there's no more kashrus anymore. This is the most devastating place where we could be in terms of a division, in terms of hatred, in terms of animosity. All these things have to be eradicated, and we just have to do it, each one of ourselves, just by ourselves. I take care of my life. I look around. I look at my relationships. What can I rectify? What can I do better? And slowly but surely, if we can just simply branch out from our own lives, that's the only thing we could do. We can't change the whole world. We can't scream from the rooftops. But if we can look at ourselves and talk to people around us and see if we can bring shalom to other situations. Just read a story over the Shabbos, really fantastic story about a very high-powered lady. Just a recent story, must have happened last 10, 15 years, and high-level therapist, and she had an office, and it's a much longer story, but I'll just give you the crux of it, and the real strong message of it is that, so she had an office in Yerushalayim, and she went every day from Beitat to Yerushalayim. She was one of these type A personalities where organized, never late to anything. She was always an hour early, no problem. I'll be on my computer, I'll type notes, I have all these clients, I talk to all these people. Just a very high-powered lady, very organized, very powerful, very intelligent, and also had a tremendously sharp ability to cut you down because of her mouth and her smarts. If she didn't like what you had to say, she would let you know it in a very powerful way. Anyway, this woman gets asked one day, she had this four-wheeled attaché case she would take with her notes, her computer, everything very, again, super organized. And one day they say, there's a dealer that's closing, they need cash, can you do us a favor and take this cash to a couple in Yerushalayim? If you go to Yerushalayim every day, so you'll save us the hassle. We're in Beitar. I think it was $40,000 she was asked to bring to Yerushalayim. Okay, fine. The day that she brings the money, she goes onto the bus. Of course, an hour and a half early. She's got everything planned out, and the bus driver says, "It's too big. I take this every day. I take it with me. Don't worry. I'll take care of it." He said, "What do you mean? They'll take care of it? Where are you going to put it?" "I'm going to put it in the seat next to me. Let's say somebody else wants to come sit down. Well, then I'll put it underneath. It's not going to fit underneath you. Then I'll put it on my lap. It's not going to be a problem." that attaché case, whatever it's called, must be on the bottom of the bus. It has valuables. I can't put it in the bottom of the bus. I'm holding it with me. It's not going to be a problem. He shuts, I'm sure you've met these bus drivers. He shuts the bus off and he says, we're not moving. We're not going to Shleima until you put that thing underneath. And she's sitting in her seat, holding the attaché case. The bus driver's sitting in his seat. The bus is 3/4 full. Okay, 7:30 in the morning, waiting to go to Shleima. And this is what's going on. And everybody in the bus started getting very annoyed, but they weren't getting annoyed at the lady. She was sitting quietly. She was respectful. She simply said, I can't part with this attaché case. And he said, I don't care. So the agitation started, 15, 20 minutes, I'm not sure how long, but it was at a point when finally the woman is saying, she's thinking in her mind, the story takes you through all her thinking. She, I could blast this guy, I can sue his pants off, I can do so much to this fellow, I can't do it, but you know what? Is that going to accomplish anything? It's right before Yom Kippur, it's a Simei Tshuva. Is that going to accomplish anything? I think I know what I'm going to do. And all this was going on in her head, she stands up, she goes over to the bus driver, have a nice day, I'm leaving the bus. I don't want to hold up the people anymore. And she leaves the bus. The bus goes away. And as she's sitting on the bench waiting for the next bus, she says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that was a big nisayon for me. You know that I could have cut him up, I could have made mincemeat out of him, and I didn't. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please, I have a son Shmuel, he's an amazing boy. He can't get a shidduch. And you know why he can't get a shidduch? I've heard from other people, because they don't want such a tough mother-in-law. They don't want a daughter dealing with a woman like me who's got a reputation of having a strong mouth and a tough personality. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please, in the schus of what I just did, please send the shidduch. And that will hopefully open up, because now my other kids can't go out because they're waiting for Shmuel, who's already, 27, to find the shidduch. So, please, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The story says, these stories are well documented. 2 days later, Erev Yom Kippur, she gets a call. Erev Yom Kippur, she gets a call, and the lady, the shadchan, says, I want to set up you with this girl, I'll see your son with this girl. And the mother says, we tried that girl a while ago. She's a fantastic girl. We wanted that shidduch desperately, but they said no, so it's not going to work. Shadchan says, I know they tried before. I know you tried before, and I know they said no. I'm telling you now it's going to work. The mother of the girl called me and wants the shidduch. And she says she was on a bus with you a few days ago. And she saw how you stayed calm under a very incredibly tense situation when you could have lashed out, and you were calm and you were courteous. And she says to her, that's the kind of mother-in-law I want for my daughter. A week later they were engaged. A week later, my true Maisa. So, when we get out of ourselves and we don't react the way we typically react, even though, again, we're justified and we can do it and you deserve it, and how can you do this to me, and how can you say this to me, and and I just heard Barry Schaefer, old Chaver, on the Torah Anytime, so he also made a point about Sinas Chidim, and he said, all you got to do, it's a simple one, but he made it more scientific, he went through the whole experiment, I'm not going to go through it, but the basic idea is that every machlokes, the other side has a point of view. It's wrong, because after all, I'm right, but there is a way of thinking that they have that you don't have. Get into their way of thinking, change the paradigm, try to think of where they're coming from. Because, of course I'm right, because this is me, and I see the world through my lens. But there's another lens. The only lens in the world is my lens. The only way of looking at things and predicting how people should act under given situations is my way. There's the other way. And there's 5 other ways, and there's 100 other ways. Because there are different ways. Oh, I didn't know. Sometimes you don't even know. Sometimes you're predicting, you're assuming. The point is, it's not just, it's a great chus for Klal Yisrael, but it's the greatest bracha in our own lives. I've heard so many times from various Gedolim, people come to Gedolim for brachas and for segulas, and what should I do? 40 days in a row, should I do this, say that, go here, pay this one, go to Kaisel, go to Meron, how about work on Lashon Hara? You want a segula? I've heard this from great people. You want a segula. If they run fair, it's let's not call it a gimmick. It's not a gimmick, but it's a shortcut to the reality of where bracha comes from. It comes from hard work. It comes from toiling. It comes from working on ourselves, not to speak lashon, not to be angry, not to hold grudges, to let things go. This is the incredible power that we have within us, and that when that power is unleashed, when that power is able to allow people to come closer together, it's the greatest bracha. It's the greatest bracha which we have to utilize. So if this avos chinam that needs to permeate our world in order to eradicate the sinas chinam that was rooted already. We read about that Surah Regel Malchus is brought down. That Surah Regel Malchus, these 10 martyrs, these 10 kedoshim v'tahirim that were taken by the Romans. Yimach Shemam v'Zichram. Why again? It was connected back to the 10 brothers in their sale of Yosef. So you see, it's part of the struggle. It's part of the issue of why we're here. That's what could be stated in, by one of the Rabbanim. That's one of the reasons why we read it during this time, because Asur Malchus represents the aveir of sinas chinam that again we're trying to eradicate. So there's so much that we can be motivated by. So powerful is the beroma chaveri of what we could work on in order to really bring us closer to Kodesh Baruch Hu as well. The achdus is not just, it's a beautiful thing within a community that we have togetherness, that we love each other, we work together. It's a beautiful thing, but it really goes so much deeper. Vahi b'shur melech v'sasei farsham yachad shiftei Yisrael. But Rabbi brings a medrash and he says something incredibly profound. And he says that really our achdus is really a precondition for HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kingship. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's king. Yeah, but can you really be a king if you have no servants, you have no people who are ready to follow you? If you have no subjects, then you're a king of what? And he says, and he brings a medrash, he says, when is Vahi b'shur melech, when is B'sasei Farshayam, when it's Yachad Shiftei Yisrael? And he says, he brings a medrash that talks about the palace, the heavenly palace abode, that is somehow connected down here with ships, and the ships represent Klal Yisrael. He says if the ships are floating off in different directions, what's going to be with the place on top? It's not going to have. This is the foundation. It's rooted on the foundation below. And therefore, if we're not together, it's not just that we're not functioning properly. It's not just that we're sort of holding back Mashiach. In a sense, we're holding back Kodesh Baruch Hu's glory. Because Kodesh Baruch Hu, I don't have a place to really set myself. There's got to be peace, and that's why the Mesil Shalom talks about the fact that if we really care about the Gula, then we're going to be malamed, we're going to work so hard at creating that achdus. If we love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we want to create that feeling of family for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Mesil Shalom says it very clearly, there's nothing that will please a father more than to have his kids get together and be friendly. There's no not greater nachas. Ask any parent. When the kids come back, especially when they're a little bit older already, they can be at the table together and they're schmoozing, they're joking, they're having a good time. That's gewaldig. There's no greater nachas than when a parent could look at all of their children and see them together. So don't we want to give HaKadosh Baruch Hu that nachas? That's really what's going on here. That's really what we're longing for. We're longing for that ability for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to reestablish his kingship. Because without a first splinter, there is no kingship. It doesn't happen. It can't be. The world doesn't recognize him. And the world is so devoid of truth. So our job is to bring that truth into the world. But I'll share with you it's a little bit of a humorous story. I think a lot of smile. Maybe we shouldn't joke on Tisha B'Av, but to smile is okay. This is a story that definitely brings a smile to a person. I might have said it maybe, 10, 15 years ago here, but it was a long time ago. But it's a very cute story and also represents exactly what this theme is, the idea of working together, of becoming one, of having this aguda achas, of this vision of connection in Klal Yisrael, how critical it is. And it's a story about a taxi driver. You have some Valley Torah boys, maybe they remember, I might have said it back in the Valley Torah days, but I first heard the story from my Byron, his language is stark. He shared the story with me. A taxi driver is telling, back in the old days, you only had one Sheirut company, and there were very limited opportunities. If you wanted to go from Yerushalayim to Bnei Brak, you grabbed the last Sheirut on a Friday afternoon, or you took the bus. But there weren't a lot of options. So this Sheirut driver, he's the last guy on the Sheirut company's list of departures for the day, and he sees about 15, 16 Jews waiting to go from Yerushalayim to Bnei Brak. And he sees there's a problem here. So he's smoking a cigarette, waiting. He's got 3 minutes before he has to leave, and he goes over to the Jews who are around, and he says, "Listen, I'm leaving in 3 minutes. I'm finishing my cigarette. I'm going into my car. I'm putting the car in drive, and I'm leaving to Bnei Brak. Whoever's in my car goes to Bnei Brak. Whoever's not in my car, I'm sorry, but I'm not deciding. I'm not going to get involved in this tug of war, who's in and who's out. My car is an 8-passenger car. Whoever's in is in. Okay. Takes the next 2 or 3 minutes. He's sitting, he's leaning by the glass door of his seat, of the driver's seat, and he's smoking his cigarette. He finally puts it out. Okay, he doesn't really look around, just opens his car door, puts on the car, puts into drive, looks at the rearview mirror, and he sees 16 Jews in his car. 16 Jews in his car. Okay, no questions. He goes to Bnei Brak, and once he gets to Bnei Brak, you can imagine, there's a police car waiting for him right as he enters into town, and he pulls him over, and he gives him a ticket for having too many people in the car. Okay. He has to appear in front of a court, in front of a judge in about 3 weeks. So he goes to the hearing. So the judge reads the docket, and he says, Yanko, it says here you had 16 people in your car. He says, what do you plead? He says, Your Honor, my car's parked right in front of the jailhouse. You tell me how I can get 16 people into that car. So he says, you got a good point. We're going to move the hearing to the street. So they take the stenographer and everything, they go downstairs, and the judge says, we're conducting an experiment here, so just hold on. And he says, could you just do me a favor, could you get in? And he's stopping people on the street as they're walking to the various things. And he gets in 8, 9, 10 is already v'dochit, at 11th, the elbow's out, the head's in the glove compartment, it's not really working. Okay, 12 for sure, nothing to talk about. So he said, okay, we can resume upstairs. They go upstairs. Judge bangs on the gavel and he says, whatever, the gavel on the thing, and he says, okay, not guilty, case dismissed. Okay, fine. So the Sheirut driver is walking out of the hall, and he says, Yanko, come here for a minute. The judge calls him over. He says, well, tell me, now, you're not guilty, I understand, but on that Friday, did you have 16 people in your car? Of course I did, Your Honor. I don't understand. I mean, we checked the car. It's not a different car, is it? No, I wouldn't lie to you. Okay, you never lied the first time too. You never answered the question, how do you plead? He said, how could I be guilty? He said, but he says, look, he says, I wouldn't switch cars. I would be lying. I wouldn't lie to you. He says, I understand. So how do you explain it? We tried it. I had an experiment where I had the people in the car and it didn't work. He says, Your Honor, you understand something. When you asked those people to get into the car, each one had a different agenda. This one had a lunch appointment. This one was visiting a mother-in-law. This one had to go to the library. This one had to return this. And each one had different. You had 11 disparate people with different agendas. You're not getting more than 11 people in that car. On that Friday afternoon, I had 16 Jews with one agenda. We got to get to Bnei Brak. When you have that, no problem. They were in. They fit into the car. And it's really a wonderful message in terms of when we have that agenda, when the agenda is not about ourselves, when we turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the power of tefillah is so incredible. The power of longing for the Yeshua is so great. We pour our hearts out with sincerity. That what do we want? It's not. We have a common vision. The common vision should be we want the Gula Shlema. The common vision should be we want that relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What an incredible gra! I just saw recently in Shir HaShirim where. I'm not going to quote the Gra, this one doesn't have the Gra, but the pasuk says, Hishpati eschem b'nei Yishlayim, Shir HaShirim Hei Ches, where he says, I adjure you, the daughters of Yishlayim, and this is referring, the Gra says it's referring to the Malachim who go to come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Lasad Lovai, after long and bitter golos, and after we've been through so many trials and tribulations. And And there were angels that were hovering over the Jewish people, and the Jewish people said, if you meet up with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, im timtzu es David, if you find my beloved one, ma tagidu loi, you want to know what you should tell him? We want to tell you, you know what my message is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Klal Yisrael is saying? Now think about it. If we wanted to give a message after this long and bloody golus, how much have we endured? How much have we suffered? The pogroms and the Inquisitions and the Holocaust and the Arab world and the bombs and the intifadas and you name it, whatever. Wouldn't you'd say that was the, Baruch Shalom, have you not seen enough of our bloodshed? But amazingly, the Gemara says, and the Mitzudas echoes the same sentiment, the same feeling. In Timso Zeh, when you find my Dodi, when you find my beloved one, you find my HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you want to know what you should tell him? Ma tagidu lei? Shechoras av oni. That's my golus. I am sick because I love you so much. I'm sick that I don't have the connection to you. And the Gemara says everything else sort of pales in comparison. Everything else is unimportant. The fact that I'm disparate from you, I'm disconnected from you. And Baruch Hashem, you think about it, we have Torah, we have mitzvahs, we have Baruch Hashem, we have so much we are able to do that connects us to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What we can't imagine is, wow, what would it be if we had Yishleimer HaKodesh? What would it be if we had a Beis HaMikdash? What would it be if we had Mashiach Tzidkenu? How much deeper that connection would be? How much more the relationship would take on? How deeper it would be? We can't imagine it, but the Gemara is telling us that's really the essence. The pain of Golus is not the suffering, because the truth of the matter is every neshama that died up Kiddush Hashem, the millions and millions of neshamas over the centuries that died up Kiddush Hashem, where are those neshamas? They're in a special place. They're in a holy place. We cry for them and we grieve for them and we miss them. But dying up Kiddush Hashem is a place where, in a sense, Rabbi Akiva was happy when he was able to die at Kiddush Hashem. They almost looked at him, what are you smiling about? You see me, you're happy. I'm tearing your skin with these horrific iron metal combs, and then you're smiling? He said, yeah, I'm smiling because all my life I said, and I finally have a chance to fulfill it. So the real loss is our disconnection. That's the real pain. We don't necessarily feel it. We're not maybe on that level. But in the truest sense, that's really what we're missing. Now I mentioned dying at Kiddush Hashem, and certainly that's what this Golus has been about. And that's what certainly part of the tears that we shed on the Tisha B'Av are tears of the blood that Klal Yisrael spilt over the centuries. But really the greatest tear and the most heartfelt tear is the tear of separation, that we're not as together as we could be. But maybe just end with this amazing story, just something that I think can give us chizuk throughout the year. Be'ez Hashem, we should never hear another negative report from Eretz Yisrael. We should never hear any tzoros in Klal Yisrael anymore. But it's just an amazing story to just put life in perspective. And it's a similar story a little bit with our Rebbe's Rebbe, Reb David, is on a similar way, but not quite the same. But the story goes that when the Mir Yeshiva was in Kobe, Japan, before they got to Shanghai, they were in Kobe, Japan. And every time I hear anything about the Mir Yeshiva, that's where my father was, Zechor Levracha, of Portnoy. He was there with a few hundred other incredible Talmidim. What an incredible Nes Gola that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wrought for Klal Yisrael to save this yeshiva, to allow them to replant Torah in Eretz Yisrael and in America. Just unbelievable how many miracles they went through. Well, one of the miracles, which I didn't know, I thought I knew the story, but I didn't know this, that in Kobe, Japan, the Nazis, who were allies with the Japanese, called the Japanese and says, "You're harboring yeshiva guys in Kobe, Japan? Hello, do you understand who we are? So you got to get rid of them." So they worked out a plan. For some, I guess the Japanese had a little bit more dignity about how they kill people, and to kill people in cold blood, the Nazis had no problem with that, but they had a plan. They're going to put them on a boat, saying that we're shipping you off to some other place, and they would have bombed the boat, and so bombs are flying all over the place. An accident happened, we're sorry, 300 Jews are no longer here. That's what happened. That was their plan. A Japanese officer heard of the plan, called the Rosh Yeshiva of the Mir Yeshiva, and said, do not get on that boat. And I assume the other people also, they were with him, I think it was 300 in total, 400 maybe, but they did not get on the boat. And sure enough, the boat went, and whatever happened, but the plane was foiled, and they ended up in Shanghai. They ended up coming to America, and the rest is history. When the Japanese found out that somebody called the Mir Yeshiva, they did the research to find out who called. Who was the traitor who snitched on us? And they tracked him down, they found him, and they killed him. They beat him to death, and they killed him. Well, a couple of the Talmidim, I don't know which Talmidim, but a few of the Talmidim were devastated by this story. And they couldn't grip it. It's so interesting because, I assume they knew that millions were dying in Europe, but again, when things are close to you, you react differently than, when things are a little bit further away, you can't really, but they could not understand. And they had a kasha. How could HaKadosh Baruch Hu let this Japanese, he's Meiser Nefesh to save the Jewish people. He saved the Mir Yeshiva. He made the call to the Rosh Yeshiva, I guess it was Chaim Shulevitz he called, and he told him, don't get on that boat. And how in the world could HaKadosh Baruch Hu allow this guy to get killed? So he said, we're going to Cheskel Levenstein, the great Mashkiach, we're going to go to ask him. So this is a story, I imagine, it's hard to make a story like this up, this must have happened. So I think 3 boys, and they're about to walk into the apartment where Cheskel Levenstein was, and where probably he was learning whatever, and about to knock on the door, and they hear him talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And which is what many of the Gedolim at night, with the Chavetz Chaim every night, will have a conversation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please, Tikkun Chatzos for the Binyan Beis Hamikdash, etc., etc. So to have a person talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's a Gadol, that's not so unique. But what he said, Mamish, blew me away. And they overheard him saying, Ribono Shel Olam, I don't understand. My whole life, I'm bespallowed to you that I should die at Kiddush Hashem. And this Japanese fellow has a schus to die at Kiddush Hashem, and I don't have the schus. You haven't given me that, you haven't put me in that place yet, where I can die at Kiddush Hashem. I don't understand the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm longing to you, I'm begging you, please, I want to give my life up Kiddush Hashem. They never knocked on the door. They turned around, they got their answer, because they understood, we live in a little box, our little 120 years are carved out, and it has to go this way, there has to be a certain plan, if it goes a little bit this way, that way, we get all bent out of shape. There's an eternity after the 120 years. And way more important is the neshama after the 120 than before the 120. And that's really what counts. It's what we do with our lives, and it opened up, certainly, to those 3 men and to anybody else who's aware of this story, and we know that Rabbi David also made a comment about the Russians. He wished that Russian bullet would have hit him. He would have died. He starts the yeshiva, and he has all these Talmidim, and yet he's saying, part of me wants that bullet to have hit me when it grazed his suit. It's a different perspective. It's a different world. But that's for special people, but certainly we should take chizuk. That certainly the kabbanos, it's tragic, and we suffer, and we grieve, and we cry. But their place is in a special place in Shemayim because they died because they were Jews, or they died because they were Moshe Nefesh for Klal Yisrael. That's called dying at Kiddush Hashem. Our job, Baruch Hashem, as we have life, we have the incredible gift of life, which is the greatest gift of all. Baruch Hashem, if we can live up Kiddush Hashem, if we can take that mentality of the Yasakum, Aguda Echos, the love that we have to feel for Klal Yisrael, the longing that we have to feel for missing HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's the ultimate pain. The ultimate pain of Golus is that we're disconnected from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hashem, we'll be able to zocha to finally create that Aguda, to create the Ava. This is special shul that certainly has stood for Baruch Hashem many decades, for Avos Yisrael, for bringing the people closer together, for welcoming every Jew into the special confines of the very special Makom Torah led by your incredible Reverend Rebbetzin, Baruch Hashem. We should be zocheh to see the end of the Golus, to see the end of the suffering, Baruch Hashem, be zocheh to be as a Meshach Meir B'meinu.